Hello everyone and welcome back, hope we're all having a great day and we're all doing well. This is one mistake for every defender in Rainbow Six Siege. Now Rainbow Six Siege is an extremely deep game which has a lot to learn, and the best way to learn at this game is by failing. So that is why I'm going to be showcasing one mistake you're making for every defender, so you're able to fix them and get the most out of your operators. Every operator will have a timestamp, meaning you can skip to your favorite operator. However, I recommend watching the whole video. As well as this, if you do go on to enjoy, be sure to subscribe since we are trying to hit 100k by the end of the year. And as well as that, drop a like and maybe a comment since it does help with the algorithm and it is appreciated greatly. And without further ado, let's get into this video. Now let's start off with the latest defender, Fenrir. He is arguably one of the greatest operators we've ever received in this game. He has an extremely strong loadout, and as well as this, his gadget is basically like pre-nerf Melusi but stronger. Melusi, when she first came out, was extremely overpowered, but what Melusi does is she slows you down and gives away your position. You can still see the enemies coming at you. However, what Fenrir does, not only does it block off your sight, but it also alerts the enemies that you are there. Whilst you are blinded by Fenrir's gadget, the chance of you being able to successfully fight back is extremely slim. This makes Fenrir one of the strongest defenders at the moment. Now the main way of clearing Fenrir's gadget is by simply shooting them. As well as this, Brava can hack them, and Twitch and Zero can destroy ones which are activated. So what I've seen a lot of people doing is trying to hide their Fenrir gadgets in places attackers won't be able to see to hopefully catch them off guard. But in doing so, they have been making a lot of their Fenrir gadgets basically useless. That is because Fenrir only activates out the front of his gadget. People will start trying to hide his gadget inside objects, but since there's objects around the open gadget, that will be blocking a lot of the activation. For example, I've seen some people giving out tips like on Chalet, if you put it inside the washing machine, people that walk past will be caught in it. And that is true, and it will give away their position, but they'll only be caught for a few seconds, and you're not getting the full effect out of this gadget. That's because a lot of the area around this open gadget is being blocked by the object. So you have to be really smart where you're placing your Fenrir gadget, and you have to remember that a lot of the environment around the placement of the gadget will block the gadget from actually activating. And when it does activate, sometimes it will only activate for a second, the attacker will get a very short effect, and you won't really get much out of it. Considering how strong Fenrir currently is, you won't be getting the full effect and properly blinding the operators, especially when they go to take a gunfight. So yes, keep trying to think outside the box of where you're going to place your Fenrir gadgets, but just keep in mind that objects will block it, and sometimes you're putting them in places which are basically useless. Next up we have Solis, and this might come as a surprise to a lot of people, but when you play Solis, you have to be a bit selfish in the prep phase and simply don't set up the bomb site. Just go on your microphone and say to your team, look, I'm playing Solis, I need you guys to set up site, I'm gonna go hunt drones. Solis is possibly the only defender in the game that shouldn't set up site. Solis works best in the prep phase because that is when attackers are restricted to being on their drones. If you're in the normal action phase and the attackers set up a drone and know there's a Solis, they'll quickly hop off the camera, meaning that it won't appear on Solis' scanner. But since attackers can't do that in the prep phase, that means their drones will be seen at all times. So attackers either have to keep one of their drones in spawn, so the whole team has to sit on that, or they have to put them in the building and Solis can get them in the prep phase. Because attackers are so restricted in the prep phase, that is why you as a Solis must hunt down all these drones, because you are taking a lot of utility away from the attackers before the round has officially started. When you spawn in, don't start reinforcing the wall, start hunting down those attackers' drones, because a lot of the time that will be more valuable than setting up the bomb site. Next up we have Azami, and something I see a lot of Azami players do is in the prep phase they'll start placing their Kiba barriers on doorways. Please don't do that. This early into the round you are only harming your team when you do that, and you're basically wasting a Kiba barrier. If there's 30 seconds left on the round and attackers are pushing the bomb site, yes, do this to doorways, slow down their push, give away their position, but if you're going to use them on doorways, especially early in the round, then place them at the top of the doorway. This means that your teammate defenders, if they want to come back to site or get through these doorways, can do so by crouching through, but this also means that attackers will have to do this as well. If they want to run through the door, then they will have to break the Kiba barrier, giving away their position, or they can try crouch through the doorway, which will put them at a disadvantage, since you could then get a lot of one-way angles on them, and as well as this just limits the amount of movement they can have, since they can't sprint through a doorway and run to cover. They're going to have to crouch through, or they're going to start punching the Kiba barrier. Next up we have Thorn. Now recently she got the 1.5 times scope, which means a lot of people are playing her just for her weapon, but we're going to be focusing on the gadget because I don't think this 1.5 will last, and the core issue as to why Thorn is underperforming is because of her gadget. It was never because of her gun. That buff was simply just a band-aid buff and didn't address the real issue. The big issue I see a lot of Thorn players do is they'll try and play her like Kapkan. Place a Razor Bloom on a doorway and hope for a free kill. Rather, you should use her gadget to disperse the location of attackers. Let's say for example you put a Thorn trap in the default plan on CCTV cache on Clubhouse. Let's say there's 20 seconds left on the round and you have this Razor Bloom hidden in this default plant spot. The attacker runs in to go for a plant and then they detonate the Razor Bloom. That means now they're going to have to either A, get off the planting animation and shoot the Razor Bloom so they don't die, or B, completely move out of their cover, exposing their body. You may not get a kill from this, but you're slowing down the planting process. In this time, your teammate it could be repositioning, an Echo Drone may finally be reaching this location, a Nitro Cell may be finally thrown. Now, a lot of people will say, can't Lesion, Ella, other operators do this better? Potentially, and that's why I think maybe they should look into buffing Thorn's gadget instead of her weapon. Next up we have Thunderbird, and something I think a lot of people forget is the fact that Thunderbird also heals the attacking team. Make sure you place Kona stations in places where it's the most accessible for defenders and the least accessible for attackers. I was in a situation the other day where I was in a 1v1 situation and one of the attackers pushed up white stairs. This attacker was pretty weak, but then the moment they reached top white, they got healed because there was a Kona station there. I wouldn't really recommend putting Kona stations on entry points, because especially when attackers start to take site, they're just going to be gifted with a free heal the moment they step in the bomb site. If attackers are going to get heals from Kona stations, then at least make them work for it. Next up we have Aruni. Now Aruni is one of my most favorite defenders in the game, and her gadget is great. Not only can she place them on doorways, but she can place them on hatches as well as walls. And a mistake I see a lot of people doing is that they'll just dedicate a bunch of her gates to a very common breach point. One of these is on Canal top floor breach. I've seen people dedicate 2 out of the 3 barriers to these walls, and I don't really understand why people are doing this. Even when attackers breach this wall, they can't plant in that room. They still have to go further into the bomb site. So if I like to slow down this push once the breach is open, I like to put the gate on the doorway into the bomb site rather than the walls themselves. And the reason I like to do this is because you're still slowing down the attackers, but you're only using one gate. If the attackers breach the wall and you've got a gate on both walls, then they'll destroy one of the gates and just walk through that side of the wall. Placing the gate on the one doorway means that they have to funnel through that one doorway which has the barrier on it. As well as this, if they enter beside the breach and come through a little rotate, maybe they'll breach the wall here, then they still have to funnel through this doorway. And as well as this, that means I've got 2 more gates in my pocket. I can place one on the doorway at top green, or I can place it top red or the doorway by box. I feel like wasting more than half of your utility on a single entry point is just a waste of this operator. So yeah, funnel them into the one doorway, don't waste 2 on one wall. Next up we have Melusi, and this one is pretty simple. Stop placing her gadget at head level. When you're an attacker and a defender, most of the time you should be aiming at head level or at least upper torso when you're walking around the map. That is factually correct, because if an enemy comes into your line of sight, then you're more likely to hit them if you're aiming at their level rather than staring at your feet. So let's make clearing Melusi Banshees more inconvenient for the attacker. The moment you activate a Melusi Banshee, the center of the Banshee becomes vulnerable and you can shoot it and destroy it. If you have this placed on the floor, that means the attacker has to look down to shoot this Banshee. Whilst this attacker is looking down, they can get caught by surprise and be taken out by a defender. Now let's imagine that you have this Banshee placed at head level, and you as the defender swing this angle also at head level. The attacker is going to have a much easier time readjusting to you and taking you out. It's the same reason as to why the higher the rank you are, the more likely you are to stand in the frost mat. I didn't make that up, that is statistically true. Diamonds and champions are more likely to stand in frost mats than low ranks. That is because diamonds and champions more of the time are looking at head level and not looking at the floor. So use this logic with Melusi, place it on the floor, divert their attention, and then take them out. Now a mistake I see a lot of Oryx players doing is they're not really pre-planning the flank which they are going to use. If I was playing Theme Park and I knew we were defending Office and Initiation, then I would open up the hatch and cache and potentially go for a late round rotate. I think a lot of Oryx players also just forget that they can climb hatches. You can have an effective roam as Oryx and then safely return to site, avoiding claymores, air jabs, track stingers. A lot of the time you'll see a lot of Oryxes basically just try and fight defensive gadgets such as them and get picked off on their flank back to site. You're way more useful as Oryx if you have a successful roam, then successfully get back to the bomb site and then basically become an anchor for the last 30 seconds. Don't get picked trying to fight with an air jab across the map. And a big thing you'll do there as well is if they know that you're somewhere out on the map, you're going to have that phantom pressure of them thinking there's going to be an Oryx behind us, when in reality you're back in sight holding a crossfire with your teammate. Just because you get one pick on the roam doesn't mean you should then die and call that a successful roam. A big mistake I see a lot of Wamai players doing is that they're not being creative enough with their discs. How many times have you picked Wamai and you've just thrown all your discs basically at the top of a doorway on site? It will be pretty much useful, but the moment someone lobs an aid in there, you'll be destroying the rest of your discs around that doorway and some friendly utility as well. I'll use Theme Park Armory as an example here. Let's think of the maintenance wall, and let's say this wall is electrified. Hiding a bunch of the magnets in maintenance itself will catch so much stuff. You'll catch Ace charges, Habana pellets. They could bring a thermite, but they still have to clear the electricity. Let's say they throw an EMP nade, but again, the magnet catches it and drags it away from the wall. A lot of people seem to forget that Wamai is secretly a really good wall denial operator, in the sense that he prevents those gadgets from even getting close to the wall, especially in rooms like these where you can hide them really well. Think a little bit outside the box when you play Wamai. When you play Goyo, think about how you would attack this bomb site as an attacker. Think of the angles you use when you play play attack. If the Goyo canister you've placed is in those angles you're thinking of, then you're playing Goyo wrong. Goyo is most effective when his canisters are hidden and protected very late into the round. If you have every doorway covered with a Goyo canister and there's 30 seconds left on the clock, then you've won the round. Don't just randomly place them on the wall in sight or on a barricade, which will get destroyed super easily and just clear all the utility extremely fast. And if anything, you're giving the attackers an advantage, since that's basically dispersing a location a defender could be hiding. Keep them smart, keep them hidden, and keep them ready for those late round detonates. Right, next up we have Warden, and I'm going to keep this one short and simple. Anytime you're about to go into a head-on gunfight with Warden, just activate your gadget. It lasts long enough that by the time you're done with that gunfight, your gadget will still pretty much be active but about to end, and that just means in the off chance that you do get flashed during this gunfight, you won't have to faff about by activating your gadget, it will already be there. And heck, if you take on this head-on gunfight with your gadget active and you don't get flashed, that's fine. You would have still won the gunfight most likely anyway, since you got that 1.5 times scope, and you can just retreat and allow your gadget to recharge. Now next up we have Mozzie, and this is the fact that you'll see a lot of Mozzie players place their pest at the top of a staircase, where attacker drones can successfully navigate around it by jumping on ledges, jumping over the barriers, and basically dodging the pest. Very simply, just place your pest lower down on the steps. It doesn't have to be at the very bottom, but don't just put them at the top where attackers' drones can sneak by. Place them at that nice little sweet spot in the middle where it's not too far down but attackers can't navigate past. Right, with Kaze, how many times have you placed your electric claw either at the top or the middle of the wall? I'm going to assume a lot of you do this pretty much all the time. Well, something I've been enjoying doing with him recently is placing my electric claws on the floor in front of the breach, but as far away from the breach as possible. With Thatcher having as high as a ban rate as he does, that means a lot of attackers are resorting to the secondary impact EMP, which has a much smaller range than Thatcher's. And a lot of the time, if someone tries to EMP an electric claw that's just this far away from the breach, it sometimes won't even reach. It is possible for the impact EMPs to reach this, but especially if it hasn't been droned, a lot of the attackers will be trying the top, the middle, and this one which is tucked away very far back at the bottom has to be quite a precise throw, and even if you can dodge one EMP nade, that is one EMP wasted. Next up we have Clash, and a big mistake I see a lot of Clash players making is that they think that they're playing a fragging operator. You're playing Clash, bring the super shorty, make rotates, head holes, lines of sights, open up hatches if they need to be opened, place down your gadgets, keep the shield in front of your face in the action phase. Your entire purpose as Clash is to help your teammates. You're not there to get kills. Go play Call of Duty if you want to go get frags all the time and you only want to get kills. When you play Clash, you're not getting kills. You're helping your teammates get kills. You're giving your teammates info, live info. You're slowing down attackers. Unless you're in that really bad pinch where you have to hopefully try and get some kills by switching to your secondary, you should be keeping that shield in front of your face the entire time and letting your teammates work off of you. Now, Maestro is an operator who, for a lack of better terms, has just gotten worse as the game has went on. Originally when he came out, the only way to counter him was with Ash charges, Sophia charges, sledgehammers, grenades. Thatcher's EMP would also disable it, it wouldn't destroy it, and it would come back online. And other than that, unless he opened up the screen to shoot, he was a force to be reckoned with. But nowadays, a lot of the attackers have the Gon 6, which can destroy evil eyes pretty easily. You can block the vision of an evil eye now by simply punching the glass. This was a nerf that came a few years ago alongside the same thing from Mira. EMP nades are widely available on attack now, so you can just throw it at the evil eye, it will open up a little bit and you can destroy it. And as well as this, Brava can completely hack it and make it an attacker's gadget. So honestly, nowadays Maestro has become a lot harder to play, so I guess the mistake a lot of people are making with Maestro is that they're just placing their gadget in locations where it's easy to punch, easy to get hold of as Brava, since Brava can get around, mute jammers, Mozzie Pest, since their pick rate is so high. You kind of just gotta tuck away Maestro's evil eyes deep into sight, which then again, you don't get the most use out of. And I guess that is my tip for you, just try and hide them as much as possible. I don't really have much to give for Maestro because at this current point in time, he's kind of weak. And I hate to admit that. This next one is for Alibi, and it's pretty funny because people are still throwing Alibi prismas outside, believing that it's still going to appear as an operator running outside for the attacking team. I'm sorry if this is going to burst some people's bubbles, but Alibi prismas don't get pinged outside anymore. They removed that ages ago. It was a pretty dumb feature, if we're going to be honest. If attackers shoot this prisma whilst it's outside, they can still be pinged, but it won't be detected as an outside operator. So keep your prismas in the building. There's not much use throwing them outside. Now, the mistake I see a lot of people make for Vigil is a mistake I make myself, and that is the fact you'll just randomly start full sprinting when you have your gadget active. Now, in the latest patch note, they did change this a little bit. Before, it would completely deactivate your gadget if you started to sprint, and now you will show up as a blur on cameras. So it is a little bit stronger than it was before. However, you are still pretty much giving away your position if you're sprinting with Vigil's gadget. So if you're playing as Vigil, just make sure to maybe slow it down a bit if you are trying to stay hidden from drones, and try and refrain from movements such as vaulting. If there's a wall in front of you and you can walk around it, walk around it. because if you vault, you'll show up as a blur on the cameras and attackers will be able to know where you are. Now, Ela is a very easy operator to understand, and a big mistake you can make with Ela is just not acting off your Gersmot mine. When you get concussed by these mines, it does put you at a pretty big disadvantage. So if you're playing close to your mines as Ela, play off them, swing the operator the moment they are concussed. You can play a more passive playstyle as well, but unless those gadgets are deep in the bomb site and are going to be useful in late round pushes, if you have them out of sight and an attacker's hitting them and no one's acting off that, then that is kind of just a wasted Ela mine. Now, a big mistake you'll see a lot of Lesion players do is they won't place their goo mines far enough away. And what I mean by this, they'll place them in places which by the time an attacker stands in it, that attacker is already in good enough a position to take out a defender. Not only does Lesion cause damage to an attacker and slow them down, it also gives away their position. If you're playing on Clubhouse CCTV cache and you have one of these traps on red stairs, if Lesion places the goo mine at the top of the staircase or near enough to the top, yeah, the attacker will hit it when they reach the top of the stairs, but the attacker is already at the top of the stairs. That means that it can maybe take someone by surprise who is by rotate or who is by breach. That's a failure by the Lesion right there. The goo mine should be far enough down on the staircase that the defenders are getting alerted of this attacker pushing it way before the attacker even gets an angle on them. Even if the attacker doesn't care about the goo mine and still pushes up the stairs to go for a kill, at least defenders will have enough time to be warned, get in position, and be ready for this attacker. You want to give your teammates and you as a player as much warning as possible and put that attacker at the disadvantage. Next up we have Mira, and I don't understand why people in 2023 Rainbow Six Siege are placing mirror windows on external breaches. You may find this surprising, but people still do this. This isn't early Mira anymore. Before, you could place a mirror window on one of these external breaches, and it could be relatively successful. That is because a bullet or a twitch drone to the canister was pretty much the only way to clear a mirror window. Nowadays, you can simply just punch a mirror window. And the moment an attacker gets to this breach, they can now just break the window by punching it, which makes it pretty much useless. When you're setting up your mirror windows, you should be preparing for those late round pushes and angles which attackers are potentially going to get hold of. Mira is no longer the first line of defense for the defensive team. A mirror window should be something that defenders have to fall back on. Here's quite a simple mistake you're making with Echo, which you probably haven't even realized. You know when you make a rotate on a wall, a lot of the time, the bottom of that rotate will still be a little bit intact and you can get your yokai through that. Sometimes, just the way the wall is designed, you'll have these little bits at the bottom. So make sure if you're the one making the rotates or if your teammate's making the rotates, maybe someone has a bailiff in their pocket, just tell them to destroy this bit at the very bottom of the wall so you have a lot of movement for your yokai and they aren't limited to just go through doorways. If attackers have site control and they know that they have an echo, then they'll be looking at doorways for defenders pushing, and as well as that, if they see a yokai driving through, they'll shoot it. But if you have these little holes for the yokai to go through to pass through the site easily, then it's just going to help you as an echo player. Here's a mistake a lot of Caveira players are doing, especially against their main counter Jackal. You want to make sure that you're leaving as little footprints as possible. When Caveira uses her silent step ability, she doesn't leave footprints. So if you're running across the map as Caveira and you're using silent step and it's about to run out, maybe just quickly try and find a corner, sit there for a few seconds until your ability comes back, and then continue on your roam. This just makes the job of Jackal so much harder, and it's just going to make clearing the Caveira that much harder. Valkyrie, here's a simple mistake. Stop placing your Valk cameras in default spots in the corners or rooms. Attackers are going to find that so easily. Start exploiting the floor when it comes to Valkyrie. Here's a great one for top floor on Chalet for a Valk cam to watch default plant spot, as well as the entrance from K9 into office. If you come to kitchen and shoot out the roof above you with your deagle, here you can throw your Valk cam, and as you can see, your Valk cam will be completely hidden under the desk. But it still gives you enough intel into office, and the attackers are going to have a hard time finding this Valk cam unless they've got an IQ. Here's a mistake a lot of Frost players are doing. They'll place their Frost mats on windows, which attackers can easily go on a vertical rappel on and just destroy the Frost mats. For example, on both of the windows in stock on the map bank, attackers can easily just go on a vertical rappel here, shoot beneath the window, and destroy Frost mats. So just be a bit more conscious about which windows you're placing Frost mats on, but also keep in mind, not every attacker is going to be smart enough to go on a vertical rappel to destroy a Frost mat. Now this one from Mute is quite similar to Solis, however, you should still be setting up the bomb site with Mute, but you should be prioritizing your gadget first. And you want to get those mute jammers down on site doorways as fast as possible. That means in the prep phase alone, attackers are going to have little intel on what defenders, especially anchors, are in sight, and as well as that, what setup they are going to expect. This is how I do it when I play top floor in Oregon. The moment I spawn in, I place a mute jammer top white, then I head over to the door into trophy and place a mute jammer there. And then also start to place mute jammers in trophy as well as master. So that means in the first few seconds of the round itself, attackers can't even get their drones near the bomb site, and after I've done this, I just go straight to making rotates, reinforcing walls, and setting up the bomb site. The less the attackers know, the better. Now, a mistake I see a lot of smoke players do is they won't realize how smoke mechanics work in this game. A lot of the time, they'll expose their whole body just to throw a smoke canister. That doesn't have to be the case. Use the top of reinforced walls and throw them over there. Even if it sticks to the roof, the smoke will still disperse in that room and hit the attackers. It's not worth losing smoke, a very good operator to have in the final moments of the round. Dying to an angle, he doesn't necessarily have to peek. Now, Castle is an amazing operator, but people do make mistakes with him, and a big mistake they do is they'll just castle off the site, ruin a lot of line of sights for your teammates as well as rotations. Think about where you're placing your castle barricades and how it's going to be helpful for your team. For example, let's take a look at border. Rather than just randomly castling everything off, we can extend to waiting room, castle off a certain angle, make an extend into the bomb site itself, and this leaves attackers in quite a weird position because then defenders can extend to a position where they shouldn't really extend from before, and it's just going to cause more work for the attackers, and they'll potentially get picked from angles they were not expecting. A big mistake a lot of pulse players will do is that they'll just use his scanner for himself and hopefully try and pick out the nitro cell. Use your microphone, tell your teammates where the enemies are pushing from. Yes, you can be useful for that late round plant, but the moment attackers know that you're a pulse, they'll just plant on a hard surface or they'll stand on top of a bed, and your nitro cell won't be able to hit them. You can have way more use with pulse throughout the round if you're actually assisting your teammate with the scanner, rather than hoping to go for a hero play 2.5 minutes later. A big mistake a lot of dog players will do is that they'll just keep stimming themselves every single time they've been shot. If you've lost 10 HP from getting shot as a dog player, don't waste a stim on yourself. That could go to yourself when you have even more health lost, or to one of your friendly defenders who are on 10 HP and need that stim. If you're going to heal yourself, just think, am I actually worth using this stim right now? Or am I just healing for the sake of it? The biggest mistake you can do as a Rook player is just not placing your armor. This is your one job. Place it at the beginning of the round. Roamers have to go outside of sight. If you have a Solis on your team, like I was saying, she has to go hunt those drones. Make sure that Rook armor is ready for her so she can just leave sight. If you're playing Rook, get ready just to hold that button down which deploys your gadget and do it as fast as possible. That's how you end up in situations where there'll just be 1 or 2 Rook armors sitting randomly in the middle of the site. When you're playing Jager, keep in mind the gadgets which are around you. For example, if your teammate has a deployable shield placed and you're going to be playing off that deployable shield, then make sure that your ADS is in front of that shield. You want the ADS to be the first point of contact for any projectile which is thrown at you. If a gun 6 has shot at the shield, then you want that ADS to catch it first. I know this is pretty simple, but the amount of times I've seen people place ADSs behind Kiba barriers or shields is actually mind-blowing. Next up we have Bandit. Very simple mistake. Don't place both of your Bandit batteries in the middle of the walls where they meet. So what I mean by that, try and place the Bandit batteries as far apart as possible. Especially with EMP secondaries being as popular as they are, if you place them right beside each other, then one EMP is going to get it. You want to put them as far apart and just make the job for the attacker harder. Now Tachanka is quite a hard operator to use. He just has never found his place even after the rework. And a mistake you can make with Tachanka is just not taking advantage of how his gadget works. The projectiles bounce a lot off of doorways. That means that you can flame off a lot of locations without exposing your body. No need to get up close and personal, you can do it from afar and make use of this fun mechanic. And finally, a mistake you can make with Kapkan is placing them at head level. Don't do that, place them at feet level. Think of the same thing I said about Melusi. You want attackers to be looking down. That's where you'll catch them by surprise and it just puts them in a more vulnerable position. And as well as this, they're more likely to see a trap which is at head level. And so everyone, that was one mistake for every defender in Rainbow Six Siege. Be sure to let me your thoughts in the comment section below and drop a like on this video if you did enjoy. Be sure to drop a comment, it helps with the algorithm, and subscribe if you are new. And let me know some mistakes you see a lot of people making as well. Have an incredible rest of your day. I love you all. Stay safe. Peace.